Hi, and welcome back to GCSE History lessons. In this lesson, we will look at the election of President Harry Truman, the creation of the world's first atomic weapon, and the formation of Soviet satellite states in Eastern Europe. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain three major events which occurred after the Yalta Conference, and understand the impact these events had on relationships between the UK, USA, and USSR. You will remember from previous lessons that the major leaders of the Grand Alliance, Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill, came to many agreements during their conference at Yalta in February 1945, including creating free and fair elections in post-war Europe, especially those occupied by the USSR. You should also remember that Roosevelt was the most optimistic leader of the big three, determined to create a peaceful post-war world, and that in 1944, Churchill and Stalin had agreed to divide Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. Some months after Yalta, however, tensions between the parties began to rise. The first major event occurred on April 12, 1945, when President Roosevelt died of a stroke. His successor, President Harry Truman, was a military man who hated communism and Stalin personally. Truman was less willing to negotiate with Stalin and sought greater power for the United States instead of creating a global system for peace as Roosevelt had hoped for. Second, on June 28, 1945, the Provisional Government of National Unity took power in Poland as a coalition with heavy communist sway. The Red Army still had a heavy presence in Poland, and it was becoming clear to the UK and USA that Stalin did not intend to give Poland free and fair elections. Free elections also failed to happen in places such as Bulgaria and Hungary. Finally, on July 16, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, the US successfully tested the first nuclear weapon. The creation of the atomic bomb had been the aim of the Manhattan Project since 1942, with the fear that the Nazis could create a similar weapon of their own. Truman saw these weapons of mass destruction as an ethical weapon, which could end wars quickly and avoid years of bitter fighting. Upon hearing of the Manhattan Project, Truman said, referring to the Russians, "If it explodes, as I think it will, I'll certainly have a hammer on those boys." Truman did not tell his allies about this weapon, but he would allude to its existence to Stalin later, and this caused problems for the two superpowers. So, to summarise what we've learned today, after the Yalta Conference of February 1945, US President Roosevelt was replaced by Harry Truman. The USSR showed signs that it intended to impose communism in Eastern Europe, and the US successfully detonated the world's first atomic weapon. These three events raised tensions between members of the Grand Alliance and made the possibility of a post-war agreement on the future of Europe and the world unlikely. Next lesson, we will take a look at what occurred at the final wartime conference in Potsdam. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on GCSE History Lessons.